Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Ryan, and today I wanted to tell you all about myself. Now, I know that's probably not the most interesting thing to talk about, but realistically, this is for the purpose of the YouTube algorithm. I know I'm only going to get, 5 views maybe on this video. 4 of those are going to be me just from different devices. So, I wanted to take a minute and introduce myself and tell you all about what it is that I do and what I know, okay, and why this channel exists. So, I'm good at just one thing and one thing only, and I have a lot of things that go on over the course of my life. Very busy guy, and maybe I'm underselling myself in other areas, right? I'm probably good at some other things, but this one thing has made all the difference in my life, and I know that it can do the same for you. And that is 2 simple words: getting organized. Okay. Now I have pockets of chaos in my life, right? I'm a father of 4 kids, super busy guy, have a lot of personal things going on. So I let that chaos happen because I balance it with order in other areas of my life. So, specifically in business and operations, I've been in operations for about 15 years and going. I know all about how to efficiently run an organization. I've led organizations with as many as 330 people. I've run operations and businesses that have wide reach globally. And so, knowing and understanding this one important thing is critical, and that is how to get organized. Okay. And staying organized and being able to maintain that organization throughout the life cycle of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's business, nonprofit, working for government, doesn't really matter, right? Staying organized is the most important thing. And that has really paid dividends in my life, okay? Um, so we're really going to talk a lot about systems and processes and things like that. Super boring, right? But if you're a business owner, if you're somebody who's in operations, in any business or organization, you need to know what it is that makes that thing go forward, right? A system is nothing more than an input, a process, and an output, okay? So if I look at it from this perspective: inputs, process, outputs. And one sequentially leads to the other, right? And it can become a cycle too. So it depends on what you have going on. So you might have a process for getting new clients, for example, okay? So if we have getting new clients, need an I there. Um, and then I have a process for onboarding new clients, right? I'm going to have inputs, process, outputs. And the fun thing is the output of this feeds into the input of this. As you get a client, you then have to onboard that client, right? So this entire thing is a machine. It's super important for you to understand that machines exist for the purpose of creating something, putting something out. Now, if you think of it in terms of your business, that output might be money, right? Ultimately. So your output, if it's a product, it's going to be whatever the product is, but you're trying to sell it. So you'll have a process for how you sell your product. And at the end of the day, the transaction is really the output. And so we need to make sure that overall your output as a business owner is money. It's transaction. You need to have that transaction, and you need to close that transaction. Sometimes that involves sometimes there's some other things involved with that, such as returns and things like that you have to deal with, which should certainly be part of your overall machine. But the process itself, ultimately, the entire organizational machine that you have, that you're building, needs to have an output of money. Okay, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. So that's what a system is. It's just a series of inputs, processes, and outputs. And if you think of your business like a system, you're going to have a lot of success. You're going to be able to scale. And then eventually, whenever you decide to exit, you're going to have a successful exit, whatever that means. So if you decide to give it to your child, let's say you decide to retire, you want to hand it off to a loved one, Now that loved one has the ability to take it and run with it because there's already a system mapped out and in place for them to take. Um, let's say you just want to sell it, you want to be done. So you've built this thing over the last 10, 20 years, and you want to move on to something new. You're kind of bored with it, or a new opportunity has come up, or a retirement opportunity has now arrived, and you are ready to be done with it. Well, if you have systems and you have processes in place to where you can hand off that knowledge to somebody else and it's turnkey, you don't have to do anything crazy extra. Think of like Chick-fil-A, McDonald's. Um, you have the ability to just hand it off to somebody else. And guess what? Your multiples when you sell that business are going to be so much higher. Great book called The E-Myth Revisited. I would recommend the Revisited because it's more up to date. It's got some more better information than the previous version. So the E-Myth Revisited is a great book, and I highly recommend reading that. But I already talked about that. Here are my core values. Okay, so my goal is to lead honestly, spark joy, and feel prosperity. I really trust is like my number one thing, and that's what I want with you, my viewers, as well as my clients. So I do have a business on the side that where I create standard operating procedures for business owners, and that's really what I want to do. I want to create trust. So I have a few clients that I'm kind of servicing right now that I'm helping scale their businesses by building that library of standard operating procedures and knowledge management systems, because realistically there are certain things you have to hand off, right? And that's part of your system. What can you hand off? And there's three things that are really good, and I don't remember where I've heard this, so forgive me for not knowing this, and I'm sure somebody in the comments will point it out if anybody ever watches this. But um, there's three things you can do when you come across a kind of frictional point in your business, and that is either you um, delegate, automate, or eliminate. So those are three options that you have anytime you come across a friction point in your business. You can delegate it to somebody else. You can automate it using automation software or services that create automation software specific to your business, or you can eliminate it if it's non-value added, right? And we're going to talk about all these things over the course of this channel. Um, but the goal really is to spark joy. I really want to spark joy. And my greatest desire is to help business owners rediscover um, the love and joy of business ownership, because that's ultimately what you started a business for, right? Is because one, you want freedom, maybe. Two, maybe you wanted to tinker around with some things, but at some point it's going to get to be too much, and you're going to need a little bit of help. And the way that you maximize that help without necessarily hiring everything out is by building systems that can work for you without you necessarily being there. Okay, I want to reignite that passion and excitement for business ownership, because yes, that is what it's all about. You started this business. I want you to think back to a time when you restarted your business. I want you to think back to a time when you started your business and remember the feelings and the emotions that you got when you started that business. Just the excitement. Every time I start a new business, I'm like, oh, this is super exciting. And I go full bore, 100% in, and I get super excited. And then guess what? I get burnt out. And I've been there where it's like, all right, I am at a point now where I have to start figuring these things out, or I need to be done. So, because one, I refuse to completely burn myself out to where I have a nervous breakdown. And two, my family is the most important thing to me. Okay, and this goes into the next one, where I think that family and self-care are essential foundations for success. If you're not focusing on you, you're not focusing on who's behind you supporting you, you're not doing it right. You need to make sure that you put your own oxygen mask on first. I know it's super cliche, but it's 100% true when it comes to business ownership, because you will absolutely burn yourself out. You'll put yourself in a position to where you're overcommitting and under-delivering, and that's the last thing that you want, because if you do, you're going to put yourself in a position to fail, okay? And 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, and realistically, that could be you. Now, if you're past the first 5 years, if you've made it past the 5-year mark, your chances of survival are exponentially greater. but there are still chances for failure over the course of that time. And likely the reason you're still succeeding is because of your product. Whatever the product is that you have is either in demand or just a solid product, which I guess could be in demand as well. And so those are my core values and my guiding principles. Okay, so let's talk a few numbers, and this isn't going to be the last time you see these numbers, but really standardization, systems, all that stuff is all about creating procedures, uniform procedures throughout the course of your business, throughout the existence or the ecosystem of your business. Now think about your business, take a step back. If you're looking from the outside in, I want you to ask yourself, do I have any processes or systems that currently exist that are documented and that I can transfer to somebody else without any question? And the answer should be yes. And if you have no to that entire question, then stick around and we're going to help you get there. Okay. Businesses that have well-documented processes and procedures will see a 30% increase in operational efficiencies. So when you document things, what that means is your output is going to be 30% greater than it normally would be, which is fantastic. You're going to see a reduction of errors at about 25%, which is crazy. Businesses that implement systems and processes are 2.5 times more likely to achieve explosive growth, right? You're going to see that hockey puck. And sometimes you go down, but at some point, and sometimes because you go down, let's go back to the chart here. The reason you might see it go down is because you've been here this whole time, right? And then you focus your efforts on creating systems. So your operational effectiveness is going to go down for about 90 days. And then it's going to spike like that. Okay. And you're going to see that hockey stick because it's super important that you take the time to document things. And man, there's so much to unpack there because you don't want to document every little thing at the beginning, because if you do, it's another opportunity for overwhelm. And if you overwhelm yourself, it becomes more of a challenge to stay on top of it, and eventually you're just going to chuck it and be like, I was working fine without any of this. And you're going to see this downward curve, this downward trend, and you're going to say, well, screw it, I'm just going down in business, and this guy promised me that I was going to go up. Well, you're going to see that kind of downward trend for a minute, right? You're going to experience that for a moment in time. And realistically, you want to focus on 90 days. Within 90 days, you have your core processes in place that are tied to KPIs, that are tied to measurable outcomes, okay? And then once you implement and hand them off, you're going to see that upward trend in your business, right? You're going to see that upward trend. It's super important to understand that you can outperform your competitors when you do these things, because I think I saw somewhere there's like 75 or 80% of businesses don't even implement standard operating procedures in their companies. So this is really geared towards small and medium-sized businesses. Obviously, large companies, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies are implementing these. That's what got them there. Exit. Okay, this is probably the most important thing for me because I'm always thinking long-term, and you have to as well. Companies with replicable processes and predictable outcomes are estimated to sell for up to 30% more than their competitors. Man, that is outstanding, okay? You can sell for 30% more than your competitors if all you do is document what you do, right? Take a few minutes on top of what it is that you're doing and just write it down. You can write it on a notebook and hand it off to an assistant to type out and build, okay? Here's my advice, and this is how we operate in my little boutique service, okay? One of two ways. So the client will reach out to me and say, hey, here's this process, and they'll just, hand jam it quickly into an email. We use Trello boards a lot, so they might even create a Trello card and then communicate it there. They'll jump into Slack, communicate it there, just whatever works. And sometimes we're like, hey, there's this process, and I need this documented. Sometimes they'll use a voice message on Slack, And then the other method is to actually record themselves doing it, and then they'll send it over to me. I'll transcribe everything, I'll put it in a process, and I'll put it in a nice bow for them. And so that's how businesses need to operate, because ultimately you can have that 30% higher exit compared to your competitors. Super important to do that, okay? So this is my video. I hope you found value in it. Ultimately, this is just one of many videos that I'm going to create. I hope that you like this. Go ahead and like and subscribe if it's something you're interested in. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.